Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another week of The Shift, a year of living creatively with us, the reluctant gurus. We have on the call here, as per usual, I'm Shannon. Hi.
I'm Annmarie. Hi, everyone.
And this week we are talking about how it's never too late in life to do something. So this topic came up because Anne Marie was talking about, do you want to introduce it?
Yeah, of course. We were talking about how it's never too late to do anything in life. I think when we're young, we think, or a lot of us kind of have these preconceived notions that, when you're a certain age that you do something. Like it's young people that like learn to like play the piano or get involved in hobbies like swimming and um I think there's like I've met people at like this age who can't like ride a bicycle. I myself, I'm not like a fully fledged driver, although I have like taken lessons.
Mhm.
And I feel sometimes there can be a bit of shame associated with certain milestones in life. Like a few people have commented on the fact that I don't drive. To me, in a kind of maybe sometimes a bit of a with a bit of a negative undertone. And I think it's very important to kind of, like look at these things differently because some of us don't have an opportunity when we're younger to learn a certain skill. Or maybe as a young person, like we're also like afraid or something just doesn't interest us at a young age. And I think it's very important to kind of be open as we grow older, um, to yeah, taking on new skills that we didn't when we were young, and like not being afraid of just trying anything new in general. If you think that it would be a nice idea to learn like to do ballet at like 45 and you didn't when you were a kid, what's stopping you?
Mhm. Yep, definitely. And there's so many interesting aspects to this. So you're talking there and you were saying things that was all coming into my head. I was like, oh, I want to talk about that. But let's start maybe with like the shame and the assumptions that go along with that, to do with like certain milestones in life that you're meant to hit at certain ages. And the kind of idea that like once you get to a certain age, you can no longer do things. I think it's something society really puts on us, particularly speaking from the female perspective. Definitely when I was turning 30, for instance, was the first time I ever really felt that pressure of where I am in life and how that compared to the people around me. I remember I had a boss at the time. Just for context, I'm 34 now. Um, so about 4 years ago, I had a boss at the time, and like she was so accomplished, and she was only a few years older than me. And I just I looked at like what she had done, and I was like, that's what I want to do. And how has she managed to do all these things? She was married, she had children, she had her own house, she was the director of a museum, she was an accomplished poet, like all these things. And it was the first time that I was like, oh my goodness, I'm turning 30 and don't have any of these. I haven't accomplished these things yet that I want to accomplish. Not the particular things that she'd done, but things even for myself. So that pressure is really, really is there for women and men, in different ways. And I think this idea as well, yeah, that there's this quote that the best day to start something was yesterday, but the second best day to start is today. And I think that that in particular is something that I try to hold true for myself when I'm approaching anything in life. And when I ask myself, oh, am I too old for this? Or has the time passed for this? I try to think, okay, well, if I start now in a year's time, I'll be happy that I started now rather than waiting. But the assumption as well with the driving, I mean, I have that because I don't drive, but like there are reasons as well why people don't do particular things. It may be like circumstance, maybe like someone was living in a city and it didn't serve them to drive. it may be underlying things. Like for me, I only see properly out of one eye, so I was kind of nervous about driving. The doctors told me I was like borderline for like being able to drive, and that scared me, so I didn't learn. But now that I'm older, I have the sort of confidence to be able to assess myself properly and know if I'm able for that challenge or not. I think that's something as well to take into account when you're looking at trying something new. Maybe you just weren't ready for it at that time, or the circumstances weren't right at that time, but now in your life the circumstances are. um what do you think? Is there anything that you have taken up recently then that you wouldn't have tried when you were younger, or that you would have liked to try when you were younger but didn't for some reason?
I think for me, when I think of this topic, I often think of like when I was younger, I had kind of different interests.
Mm,
And it's, or not even that, like I feel like I wasn't exposed to certain things that like
yeah,
later in life I realized, oh wow, that's actually something I like, but I didn't have a chance to do that when I was
yeah,
like 14 or something. Like for example, recently there's a pool near me and I go swimming quite regularly, and it's like so nice to be in the water, and it's like something that like, I don't know, I never even like, because I never really, like, did swimming when I was younger, like, I never like, I would some years ago probably be the person that just kinda, like, stood in the pool and, like, didn't get in properly,
yeah,
and now I'm like, "Wouldn't I wanna get in completely, like, and immerse myself," and I'm like, I just didn't realize that for one reason or another, and, I wasn't very sporty as a teenager, and I remember like, and I used to never think like I could run, or like even in university, people who went running or to the gym, like I just wasn't sporty. And then when I was like 22, I started playing ultimate frisbee, which is a sport that
mhm,
involves a lot of running. And I was just so surprised. Like I started running a bit and it was very hard. And then I remember there was one day I went for a jog, like, and I just didn't stop for like 30 minutes.
mm,
And I didn't think like I was able to do that. Like I
yeah,
didn't think that like I could run without stopping, as basic as it sounds.
mhm,
So like it's very interesting, like to see how like things come into your life for different
yeah.
reasons. You know?
No, definitely. And just on the sports there, that's a fantastic one, because I think for myself growing up, I never thought I was a sporty person. And for those of you who don't know, myself and Annmarie, we went to the same secondary school in Wexford. And like, it is really about the environment you're in and what you're exposed to, particularly when you're young and you don't have the capacity or the ability to be able to really seek these things out for yourself. And we were growing up at a time when the internet, was a new thing. Like, there's so much information nowadays out there, but there perhaps wasn't that level of access to information when we were growing up. And we were definitely shaped by the environment we were in. We were shaped by the teachers and what they said to us and what they said we can and can't do. And we were shaped by, our family situations as well, and the sort of jobs and the different societal constraints that we saw around us at that time. And sport was just like something that I was not into. I was like, this is just like not me. I'm terrible at, like, because I was saying about my eye, it makes me really bad at anything to do with ball sports and catching and throwing and kicking. Like, I'm so bad at that. And I used to be forced to do that at school, and it was sort of traumatizing in a way. Um, but I still remember in transition year TY, it's a year for those of you who are listening from different countries. It's a year in Ireland that you can do in secondary schools. Some schools they make it mandatory, but it's kind of an optional year where you don't do curricular subjects. You do more sort of broad and for your subjects. And during that year, during one of the PE classes, they took us to a gym. And I remember, I still to this day, like, really remember being in the gym and being like, oh, this is different. Like, this is, I can do my own stuff and I don't have to be part of a team with other people where I'm going to embarrass myself. And I remember like running on the treadmill and being like, God, I would actually like to do sports if we were doing this instead of team
Mm.
sports. And as an adult now, like, I am so active. Like, I run, I swim, I'm always out hiking, doing other things, and there just wasn't this concept of sport at school. It was just like, you're in a team, a rugby team, a football team, a camogie team.
Hockey team in our school.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all that. Otherwise, it's not a sport.
I I think another interesting factor you commented on the fact that we were shaped. One of the things you mentioned was careers,
Mhm.
and like I know I was reading an article recently. It was some Irish paper that came up on my phone, and it was really nice. Like it's always nice when you read these inspirational stories about this woman who has like a 10 or 11 children. She's like 40 years old, obviously a very busy woman if she has 10 or 11 children.
Yeah,
And
wow.
she's from Dublin. And in the article, she was saying she like grew up and she used to love watching like ER and these like shows about doctors. And she was just like, thought it was great. And like the idea of being a doctor to her was just amazing. But she said she grew up in this kind of like working class family and
Mhm.
like it wasn't those families that like people in those families that went on to become doctors.
Mm,
And then I don't know, at some stage later in her life, maybe she was, some stage later, she realized there actually might be a possibility of her becoming a doctor. And, she worked hard, like she did lots of courses and
mhm.
stuff. And I think she said she was put back a bit because of COVID and things like that. But finally, at the age of 40, she was accepted to study medicine. And like, I
Wow.
just thought it was a really nice story, just
Yeah.
like showing that, like, if you never give up, things can happen. And again, that point that we're making, like it's never too late to do anything. And I
Mm,
know when I was younger, like particularly like career wise, um, and maybe again, it was not that different of a time, but still quite different. You're saying like the internet wasn't as available and
mm,
options were a bit more limited. But yeah, you didn't think like I don't know, I didn't think like I could do something like that. I remember like
mm,
if I personally didn't want to be a doctor, but like people were studying anyone who got accepted into medicine had to have like the highest
mm,
grades,
mhm.
like the highest grades. And like I remember I think there was a general feeling among all people that like you just like go and do that. Like if you get the highest grades, you can do it. If not, like you can't or something. But
Yeah.
there are like so many options and like life is very long and in some
Mhm.
ways and you can actually yeah, you can fit yeah,
Yeah.
you can do it if you want to.
Yeah, definitely. You can reassess at any stage, and like what you were talking about there brought up so much for me because, like I was saying to you before we started this call as well, like when I was younger, I really wanted to be a vet for a few years, but I just knew I wouldn't get the grades. Like the grades were so high. It was the highest of the highest again to be a vet, and I remember when I was going to choose my subjects, to be a vet, you had to do chemistry and biology, and like I was great at biology. Did really well at biology, but I knew my chemistry grades were just not there. So I decided, okay, that's not the career for me, and that was it. Like I was like, okay, I can't do that. Um, and there was no really talk of like, okay, actually, when you leave school, if you wait until you're 23, then you can practically do anything you want to do if you apply as a mature student to any college. There wasn't that knowledge of that. There wasn't really that guidance of that. And I think like that is an important aspect here as well, like the guidance and the things that I come from in my background in my career, it's education. Like that's why I like working in education because you're working with young people and you can help them navigate all of this. Because the flip side of we didn't have maybe enough information when we were growing up. Now people have too much information. And like, how do you even sift through all of these different careers that you could have? Or as well, you can live in so many different countries now. You know, the world is a lot smaller like that. So there are careers that weren't even a thing when when we were younger. Um, and we know a few people who, who are like travel bloggers or like out there doing these sort of really new fangled things, and people nowadays have to navigate that as well. They have to decide what they want to do. They have to look through that. But I like the general theme of this because, like, if we're to look at my life, for instance, like, I have, when people ask me, so how did you end up here when I start a job? I'm like, what's your career background? I always laugh because I'm like, okay, so if you got like, 20 minutes because we're going to start off in musical theater, moving to media, moving to anthropology, moving to museums, and moving to events, moving to like, it's just this broad range of different things that I found myself in over time. Um, and I think for me, the focus on doing new things comes from a sort of a collecting of experiences in life. And I think it's a nice way to look at it. It's like, is this how I feel right now? Is this what I want right now? And then not to overthink it, because I think a lot of us think of the practicalities as well, and that can stop people from trying new things. They can sort of put themselves down and think, oh no, I can't do that, or I'm worried about what people might think. I'm if I'm 50 years old and then I give up my solid career to go and I don't know, look after elephants or something random. Like I know someone who started a an alpaca farm, for instance, in their later life, and like the thing is, it's your life, and you got to do what sort of calls to you at the time, if whether it's career, hobbies, or just yeah, just something that you want to do. Go on that amazing trip to like I went to Japan this year for a month and I was just like, I'm gonna do this. And so to some people, when I say that I went for a whole month away, they're like, oh my goodness, I could never do that. Because even that seems like such a big leap to do. So I think another side of this is our perception of what is new, of what's difficult, of what's strange, we have to sort of tackle that as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you're saying about kind of like welcoming what comes your way. Like in a way, we are saying like it's never too late. But then at the same time, I guess from a mindfulness perspective, like your life is just now. Like it
Hmm.
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like if you feel the call now to do something new, like if you don't, that's fine as well. But if you feel like, oh, like I'd like to try something new, or you happen to just have a conversation with someone and someone invites you to try a new hobby that they're doing themselves, just be open to it. And, I guess in a way, kind of like go with the flow and just, um, and of course, I think also that thing of just, not being too hard on yourself if you've missed like certain milestones or you didn't learn to ride a bike when you were 10 years old, like, like what perhaps most people have done.
Hmm.
It's yeah, it's just welcome the new experiences that come your way.
Definitely. And I think like what you've said about mindfulness there is really pertinent because it is by doing something new that you're probably going to be most present as well. So for people that struggle with like being in the now, with flow, with any of those sort of concepts, doing something new gets you out of your head and into the present moment because you're having to pay attention to everything in order to be able to do it. So it's a great way to practice mindfulness, I think, in a way that's perhaps more accessible to some people who struggle with meditation, mindfulness, and connecting to the present moment. Um, and I think like it keeps us sort of young, and no matter what age we are, by trying something new, and it keeps us empathetic for the next generation and empathetic for each other, that we can all perhaps be a beginner at something and remembering what that experience is like as well. I mean, you and I would have experience of teaching people as part of the Reluctant Gurus to rediscover their creativity, adults of all sorts of ages. And what most often happens, isn't it, is that people will come in and they'll be like, Oh, well, I'm not creative. I'm not creative. My job isn't creative, and I just wanted to have a go at this, and it's kind of like that statement of I'm not this, and it's not the case at all. It's these concepts we pick up over time that we're not this, we're not sportsy, we're not
We can't cook. I can't cook. Or
exactly,
something
yeah,
like this. Oh yeah,
yeah.
I don't do that. I can't do that.
Exactly. So it's a great way to challenge your ideas about yourself because we are not a statement of I cannot do this. And also, discover something about yourself you maybe never knew. And I think that's the beauty of it. Like, life definitely is a journey and not a destination. So you don't arrive at some place and you're like, oh, I'm accomplished now and I understand myself completely. That because that never happens. So by doing new things, you might discover some part of yourself that you just didn't know existed. And another great thing, maybe for our listeners to try, if they want to try something new in a creative way, is to look back at something that you did when you were younger or that you had interest in when you were younger that you never followed through and have a go at it and just do it for the fun and see how you feel about it. And you're not going to like every new thing you try either, and that's fine. But that's what I would suggest our listeners doing this week. So
It's a nice activity.
thank you everyone for listening. And we will be back next week. Please do send in as well, like how you're getting on with these activities and everything, because we would love to hear, wouldn't we?
We'd love to hear, and remember to subscribe so you can keep hearing our wonderful podcast. And my dog is saying, have a nice day.
Yay! Have a nice day. Bye.